Good afternoon. I think the symposium has started on a fabulous note of passion for collecting art. We have to thank Dr. Wahono, who's done a great job at sort of explaining to us the mind of a collector. I'm Meg Maggio. I'm the chairman of the PR and marketing on the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association and also the director of Peking Fine Arts in Beijing and Hong Kong. We have two more collectors, very different backgrounds, very different approaches, and they're each going to speak for about 10 minutes about their collection. And after, we're going to have a little discussion, raise some questions, and then open it up to the audience with any questions that you'd like to ask the collectors. I think we have a very interesting and eclectic panel today with a collector who's based in Beijing, a collector based in Hong Kong, and a collector based in Jakarta. I think it makes for very interesting sort of discussion from very different perspectives. First of all, we have Mr. Douglas So, who's based here in Hong Kong, who's a very passionate collector of photography, who started a photography museum in Hong Kong called F11 Museum. It's based in Happy Valley. I would strongly encourage you all to visit if you haven't already. And recently he's opened an art space, an art gallery type of space called F22 nearby in Causeway Bay, Happy Valley area. Next to Douglas So, we have Mr. Liu Gang. Mr. Liu Gang is a lawyer based in Beijing. He's a partner in a law firm called Commerce and Finance. He started one of the first private law firms in Beijing in the 1990s. I think of the three, he's been collecting the longest. He's been collecting since the early 90s. Very passionate and supportive of the art scene in Beijing, sits on the board of various museums, including the Ulan Center, UCCA in Beijing, and the Yuan Museum in Beijing. So I'd like to, first of all, invite Douglas So to come up and give us a little introduction to his experience as a collector.
Thank you very much. I think I will just spend my few minutes, just talking a little bit about myself, a little bit about background about my collection and my interest, as well as about F11 and F22, as Meg just very kindly made an introduction of. I grew up in Hong Kong, and then I actually, like Mr. Liu, I am a lawyer, but of course, Mr. Liu is a much successful lawyer than I am. So as a result, after being a lawyer for about 25 years or so, I decided that it's time to make a change. So I left my position, first of all, at a private law firm and then later at the Jockey Club. And then I started spending more time on my other job at the Jockey Club, working on the charities front. And I have to thank my former employer because through that job, I actually had a chance to actually meet a lot of key players and also very passionate, I would say, people in the arts and culture area. To the extent that I thought, that was a lot of fun. At least, at that moment, I thought it's probably as much fun as practicing law, and also I thought it's doing. Or pursuing my interest in arts and culture is actually very, very good in balancing my left mind and my right mind a little bit, in the sense that I think a lot of us here in Hong Kong are extremely busy doing so many things and always juggling for time and juggling to do 150 tasks a day. But I thought, at the same time, I think, through appreciation of art, and in my case, photography, which is an art form which speaks very powerfully to me at times. I thought, that is one area which I would like to spend more of my time trying to, understand this art form, trying to understand myself. and trying to, like the doctor said, a speaker just now said that, understand the world, through this art form. So about 3 years ago, I decided that, after collecting what I like, which is photographs and also cameras, that I had the opportunity to actually find a place in Happy Valley where I started a photo museum. Partly because for many years, when I traveled to different parts of the world, I always envy major international cities like London, Paris, Tokyo, New York. Every time when you go there, the problem is not whether you find any good shows that you want to see. The problem is always whether you have enough time to see the shows. Like last week when I was in Paris, I had to plan like way ahead because there were like over a dozen shows that I wanted to see, and I've got only a few days. So I was always wondering, why in other major international cities, which Hong Kong has always been trying to compare itself against or with, that why is it in Hong Kong it's not as easy, if I may say, to find a photography exhibition any time of the year, or a lot of times, major exhibitions, which especially on contemporary art, I think I would say that sometimes I really struggle to find one. Then I thought, maybe one of the solutions would be, well, then perhaps I would do my best to try to create something myself. And as a result, so in 2014, September, which is just over 3 years ago, in Happy Valley, I was very lucky to find this place in a historical building that I started F11 Photo Museum, which is a not-for-profit institution devoted to photography. And we hope that, every year we could organize about 2 to 3 exhibitions on photography. And also we have exhibitions on other forms apart from photographs, that we also have books and also cameras exhibition all year round. We hope that, through this space and also through the programs, the activities, we could actually encourage more people to come to the space, share their knowledge and share their photography, and also share the stories with each other. We also hope to use the space to promote heritage conservation, because that was a grade 3 historical building in Hong Kong. Plus the fact that just now when I mentioned the other cities in the world, we noticed that actually most of the museums there, they are private museums. Of course, there are public museums in many cities, but a lot of the very, very interesting museums, modern art museums, as we know, they are privately funded. But in Hong Kong, private museums, I think it's just a concept and an idea which is quite young. And so we hope to experiment with this private museum idea, with the view that in the long term, we hope to see more and more private museums in Hong Kong, especially when we have so many different types of collectors who have so much that they could share. And a lot of times, I would say that the reason or the excuse sometimes saying that, because we don't have a place where we could, feel secure to share our collection. So we hope that, like in many places in the world, there are different types of private museums. Recently, I know that there's a coffee museum. There's even a toilet museum. There are more than one toilet museum in the world. Surprisingly or not surprisingly, but that's I think that's the fun part, and there are people actually collecting toilets. So I don't know whether that is an art form, Doctor, but perhaps you can tell me. Earlier this year, we founded another space. It's called F22 Photo Space, and in Wan Chai. And of course, if any one of you are interested, I'll be more than happy to give you the information to both venues. And partly because after running F11 for 2-3 years, we realized after talking to a number of photographers that many of them they would like to come to Hong Kong and do exhibitions, but they don't feel comfortable doing it in a museum setting. Number one, maybe the younger photographers don't think that they are at a museum level. And some photographers think that, if I want to do exhibitions, I want to sell as well. Very legitimate request. But at a non-profit museum, sometimes it's very, very hard to mix, commercial objectives and sales, with a museum, I would say, principles. And so in the end, probably we thought that a solution would be to create another space, and lucky again to find another space not too far away from F11, where we would be more focusing on the emerging artists, and also this is also an area which we want to focus on contemporary design. So without talking too much abstracts and concepts and things, I would actually like to invite you to come to see the spaces. We are open, F22, to the public from Tuesday to Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I just want to mention that next week we will have a new exhibition. It's on Hong Kong old shops, which is a project done by a Hong Kong photographer by the name of Simon Goh, who has spent 13 years photographing the disappearing Hong Kong old shops. So it is a very, I would say, interesting and touching, and from aesthetically speaking, a very appealing exhibitions, which I would invite all of you to see. So that is a bit of what I've done or been doing in the last 20 years or so. So I haven't really gone into talking about collecting, which I'm sure in due course with all your questions, then we'll have a chance to discuss some of these concepts and share my experiences. Thank you very much.
First of all, I'm very happy to be here to share my story, experience, and the passion of the art collection. Talking about the art collection, I should start with my legal career. Before 1992, old lawyer in mainland China was the employee of states. So we received the salary. Every year we got several thousand renminbi. So at that time, the lawyer is not rich, just like every state official. In 1992, the state issued a new policy, allowed Chinese lawyers to engage private practice. So I set up my own law firm with two partners. At the very beginning, we got a lot of pressure. we borrow money to pay the deposit for the office. We have to support our family, so we work very, very hard. In March of 1993, our law office first time distribute the profits. Each of the partner, we have three partners. Each of them we can receive more than 100,000 yuan. At that time, it's big money for us, very big money. And we take all the cash into the office, put on the table in the comfort, and drinking the beer to celebrate. After several rounds of drinking, I put my portion into my bag, and put my bag in the front of a bicycle. I rode bicycle to the home. I still can have picture in front of me at time. And on the way to the home, I stopped several times to open the bag to see so many cash. So I was very excited. So on the way to the home, I passed by a gallery, and a painting just show on the window of the gallery. That's the painting. So I walk in to ask how much. It's 3,000. I took money and said, that's mine. So that's the first piece of my collection. So the painting, the artist is a small potato. He's not very successful. He doesn't become famous. But this piece is very important for me. It's a souvenir of my turning point, the souvenir of turning point of my life. So I always hung that picture in my office for more than 27 years. That's my piece. And since then, I start my collection. I focus on oil painting. Also focus on Chinese oil painting. I just, up now, I have more than 300 painting in my collection. Then I just show some of them. My collection actually covered 3 centuries, starting from 18th century. This one painted by Giuseppe Crosernini, who was the Italian missionary. This painting actually painted for the Qing court. The painting is not only beautiful and very interesting. You see the jewelry on the lady's head is Muslim style. The dress is European with the Chinese face. So 3 major cultures combined together in one painting perfectly. I think Crosernini was the ever-grown artist in 18th century, because at that time, most of the European painters paint the European people and paint for Christian. But Crosernini come to China. Of course, the reason come to China just to persuade the emperor to accept their European religion. But they print the Chinese people, and most importantly, put Muslim element in his painting. So I like it very, very much. This one, they also painted in the middle of the 19th century. The gentleman is one of billionaire in the world at that time. This painting also by painted by Chinese artists, whose name Guan Qiaochang. The English name is Lan Hua. This painting painted in about 1830. 1830 is about the first opium war, also painted by Chinese artists. This one also painted by Chinese art, painted about the very early stage of Shanghai Bone. It's year about 1850. This is painted by the Wu Zuren, one of the leading artists in the 20th century. Is about the Second World War. I believe this painting is the one of the important pieces in the mainland Chinese art history. It was painted in 1982. You can see it's about the train station. But when you carefully study, it actually represents the whole Chinese society. The key figure in the painting is police. You look at the face, look at the face, look at the body. He controls the whole society. The other. this painting was painted by the Jobandi in 1990. It's about June 4th, the event. Jobandi used very bright color to represent very heavy feeling about that event. I also you can see most of my collection is related to the Chinese history, but besides that, I also collect some of the contemporary, not some, many contemporary. For example, abstract and so on. And for more than 27 years, now I look back, I think I go through 4 stages of my collection. The first stage is the art consuming, just purchase art for enjoying my eyes, for my personal enjoyment. The second stage is a great art. So in the first few years, in the very beginning, I collect about 50 painting, not very important. And after now, someone give to them some to sell. So I didn't accept the first painting. I just sold the first one I collected. And the third stage, I realized I should start systematic collection to follow the history. So in that time, I go to the gallery, go to the auction house to look the pieces can represent each of the period of the history. And now the fourth one, and I believe the artwork was not only mark of artists, it's also the footprint of collectors. And we all say this painting was in the collection of somebody, but that's the collector's footprint. But before that, besides that, I want to do more. Therefore, I read a book that published just in this year. The name of the book is the Collecting Time, 3 Centuries of Chinese Art. This book released more than 100 pieces in my collection, and together with my review article, I want to tell next generation why I collect those paintings, what feeling I got from that painting. Thank you very much.
Hello, is this on? Can you hear me okay in the back? Hi. I think the last bit of Liu Gang's, where he was telling us about his book being published, really raises a lot of practical questions. These 3 collectors are very passionate, but there's also a lot of practical issues involved in how you maintain the collection, how you show the collection, how you live with your collection. And I'm curious to know what Douglas and Dr. Wahono, what you plan on doing as far as archiving and documenting and recording your collection. How many pieces roughly are there in each of your collections? Dr. Wahono, how many pieces roughly are in your collection?
Yeah, several hundreds only.
Several hundred.
It's a small collection.
Photographs. I guess because it's so much easier to keep a sheet of paper, in a photograph. Talk about numbers. I think our collection maybe 15,000
Wow.
Yeah.
And photo books also you collect, right?
Photo books as well, and also cameras. But I always thought that, I think Matt raised a very, very good questions, because I think archiving, also preserving your collection and what you do with the collection, as far as, making catalogs, and also annotating the information and being able to find the information. I think it's as important as finding and buying them. So collecting is actually, for me, a very, I would say, very, very time-consuming exercise if you do it seriously. And also, I think sooner or later, maybe later on, we'll discuss how you share your collection, which I think to a collector, it's probably one of the most important feature. I think in your journey in becoming, I would say, a true collector.
Thank you. Liu Gang, how many pieces roughly are in your collection?
Talking about the painting, about more than 300.
And the rest also. I know there's more. So you've already published your book. Dr. Wahono and Douglas, do you have any plans to publish books of your collection?
No, but my collection was exhibited in the National Museum Liechtenstein this year for 4 months. And we published the catalog for the exhibitions. There were 30 pieces of my collection.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you have to help the audience so we know where to find your books. We're interested in how we can find your books.
Can I share something about sharing our collection?
Yes.
With you all. At the beginning, I didn't want to share. I didn't want to let people to see my collection. So I display the artworks in my office. I felt like showing off. Yeah, I really feel until today I'm a very small collector with limited budget, and my collection is very small. And I thought like, you don't see my collection. I don't want to show off. And then one day I read a book that is a turning point. In the book, somebody wrote that if an artist produced an artwork in the middle of the desert, and only the creator has seen the artwork, the question is, does this artwork exist? Yeah. So that I kept on thinking about it for days. Yeah. And then I find the answer and say, wow, an artwork gets its soul only if you share it with other people. And then I started inviting one of my best friends, he is also a collector, to come for lunch. And he was so happy and tell everybody. And then I thought like, wow, you can make people so happy just to invite him to see. That was a turning point to share. So I would encourage you all to share, open your collection, because you make a lot of people happy and your artwork gets more soul. Yeah.
So if we want to see your collection, we can come to Jakarta.
All welcome to in Jakarta. Yeah, it's.
Thank you very much.
Meg, I would just say that I think when I talk about founding F11 Photo Museum, I mean, a lot of people see this as a place, a space, but in positioning it as a private museum, actually it embodies a few key principles. To be a museum, for me, it embodies these components. Number one, every museum, a serious museum, you need to have your own collection, a unique collection. My goal is, of course, to have certain pieces in the collection which are very, very attractive. If you like photography, if you like cameras or books, there has to be certain pieces which I would hopefully be able to say that you can only see at F11. Okay, I think every museum, they wish to have their own very, very special pieces. We know what the Louvre has, we know what Tate has, but all of that, MoMA, all of that. I think they all aspire to have certain pieces, well-known pieces to be there. Secondly, I think it's very important for a museum to actually organize exhibitions. exhibitions is one form of sharing. And through doing exhibitions, you actually be able to, study your work and be able to share your work with others. Thirdly, it's on the education part. I think, with every museum, you need to be able to share and also, spend time and resources on education, meaning that people who want to know more about the collection or the subject, you have to be able to educate them. People walking in, if they have only 15 minutes, you have to be able to tell them, make good use of their time because, they come all the way, and you'll be able to let them go away with something important about that exhibition or about that subject. And fourthly, it's about research. So I always say that, buying, after you start collecting for a while, and nowadays, especially buying, if you're not talking about, I only buy the most expensive pieces. If you actually buying, it's not the most difficult part, okay? It's, once you buy, and do you know what you have bought? Or before you buy, have you done your research, knowing, what you are buying? And I think the research part is very important because then you actually can deepen your knowledge into a certain area, meaning that you buy something after the acquisition, you study it, you actually compile some information about it, or you even discover something new about that particular object or that particular art piece that you could share with others. And finally, the last component, as far as we are concerned, is publication. And I'm very pleased to say that F11 has just published its first book on Alexander Rodchenko, which is a Russian avant-garde photographer and artist. And then in 2 days' time, F22 will be releasing its first publication on Hong Kong old shops. So we hope that this is the beginning of the beginning, and we hope that through publication, we'll be able to not just share our collection, but share our knowledge, share our research, and share our insight into particular subjects.
Thank you. That's great. One other thing about F11 Museum, I don't know, Douglas, if you're still doing this, but in the beginning, when he first opened the museum, he was leading the tours himself. So it's also this wonderful sort of passion. I think all three of these collectors share the same passion and enthusiasm. I mean, that was part of the pleasure of going. I don't know if you have enough time now to lead the tours, but it's wonderful when you're there.
Thank you. And I think since then, because now we have F22 as well, so I'm dividing time between the two places. But whenever possible, I would try to lead a group myself. Like next Monday, we have a group of 50 guests who are all alumni of a particular association. They are having a reunion in Hong Kong after graduating from their school 40 years ago. So they decided to come to F11 to spend the afternoon, and I'm delighted to host them and also give them a tour of the Alexander Rodchenko exhibition.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Wahono, your collection is in your office, displayed in your office, and Douglas So's collection is displayed in his private museum. And Liu Gang, where are you going to display your collection?
I displayed my collection on the wall in my home. In my home, there are no waste wall, full of the painting. They actually beside the home, I also run the private space, but also put on the wall. I want to see them. I feel the painting fighting with each other. They fight. Some pieces on the wall for more than 20 years, but someone only 2 months. They lost. I thought it's not good enough, so go away. So I actually want to see every day.
I have to confess, I've seen his collection at home, and the house is pretty full, even the basement.
Yeah, even the toilet.
Yeah. And about this idea of passion and infectious collecting, I'd like to know a little bit more about how each of you are influencing your friends. I think collecting is something that's like a contagious disease. It's very difficult to keep it to yourself. I think you inevitably end up influencing your friends. And from one collector sort of comes a circle of collectors. And I'd like to hear a little bit more from each of you about how you see collecting growing, especially Douglas, especially here in Hong Kong. I think photography is not easy to, you have such a passion for photography. And I'm wondering how you've been able to infect your friends with a passion for collecting.
Photography is not easy. I think cameras, which is another item that I collect, I have had better luck in doing that because there's also a big circle of collectors of cameras in Hong Kong. Recently, we sort of formed a little group that we decided that we will share what we have learned over the years in relation to camera collecting. So basically, I've got everyone to agree that if you want to join this group, we will have monthly meetings, and every month we will take turns to share on a particular subject. For that evening, we'll have a casual dinner, and then we'll spend about 30 minutes, and then we'll take turns on a particular subject that we would speak on the subject, and also everyone would contribute. So everyone at that dinner would maybe bring a piece, and then they would talk about it, so that we all learn something at the end of the evening. And we also agree that we will be writing blogs. So we will have our website very, very soon, and then each of us will be contributing a short article about 200 and 300 words every month or every 2 months to it. And I think hopefully over time that would become a little library of important information that we could share with the beginners and also anyone who is interested in learning more about the subject.
And Liu Gang, I know in Beijing there's a lot of conversation about collecting on WeChat and a lot of WeChat groups and collector groups. Have you influenced your friends and colleagues to start collecting?
Yes. Actually, several mainline lawyers, after seeing my collection, they start to collect. And also, I give some lecture, and I always tell that the people collecting is not only the collection of arts. The actual it make your life more meaningful. You can meet the people you never met if you're not collecting. You can understand something you should not understand if you not collect. For example, I collect painting made by gay. After that, I talk with artists. The artists tell me a lot of things. Yeah. Before that collection, I don't understand. I don't understand them at all. I think that is very strange things. But after that, I totally understand them. So I tell the people, if I'm not in the collection, I always keep very long distance with gay. Mm-hmm. But now I understand it.
That's great.
Yeah, we all share the same experience that we meet new or young people who comes into an art exhibition. I always, if I see a new face, I always come to them and say, "Oh, I'm Wiyu. Yeah. So, do you interested in art?" And then I bring them to the art lovers dinner, and a lot of them becomes collectors. But actually, the target is not to pull someone to become a collector. We just want to share the experience in collecting good artworks, giving a lot of information about contemporary art and so on. And after doing it over 10 years now, the Art Lovers Dinner, And we meet a lot of the people that we met 10 years ago, and they still buy the decorative artworks. It's frustrating, really. And friends of mine, they make jokes if they see a collector collecting, let's say, 20th century impressionistic artwork, which is very colorful, and then others collecting the koi fishes and horses. And then they say, Wiyu, you failed. You have been doing it over 10 years now, and he still collect the colorful artworks. This is actually sometimes frustrating. Yeah? Also regarding the conservation, I collect new media art. Conservation is, I think, challenging. Yeah, and you spend a lot of money for the artworks. Some are very expensive because of the computer and all the technical equipments that we need. And then you don't know how long it will survive. Yeah, and if you write emails to the galleries, nobody care. Just a lot of galleries are here. Just a very simple problem that I have. If I buy a video art, you give me a DVD. DVD in 10 years, there will be no DVD players anymore, right? There will be maybe Blu-ray or orange ray or red ray, I don't know what. And then first, that if I copy my DVD into a USB to plug into the television, it's a law infringement of IP right, Berne Convention. It's not allowed. Yeah, if I convert later on to another format instead of MP4, like whatever in the future, it's also not allowed. So all the artworks that you have seen in my collection are counterfeit per definition because it's copied without the permission from the artist. And I write a letter, an email to galleries and say, give me a certificate that allow me to convert the file for, the topic is called technological obsolescence. And you know, they never reply. No, not only in Asia, worldwide. Maybe they think like I'm crazy. I mean, but this is a problem, yeah?
Well, hopefully the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association members now will do better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to find a solution. That is only a very small problem that we talk now here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow at the symposium. Mm-hmm. Sui is here from the Tate, and she's done a lot of work on conservation of Nam Chum Pike, and it's a big challenge.
Yep.
You know, so it's a technical challenge. It's more than a legal challenge, I think.
Yeah, technical.
Not only influencing your friends and individuals, but I think also as private collectors, you have a big influence on institutions, on state and public institutions and private museums. There's also the individual collectors, we say, are really the people that fuel the museums, that support the museums and keep the museums sort of responsible to their constituents. And I'm wondering about your involvement with museums in Indonesia, in China, in Hong Kong. How do you perceive your role in interacting with the larger community of museums?
I start first, yeah. We don't have so many museums in Indonesia, so that, very simple questions. I'm not involved with at all, yeah, because there is no contemporary art museum in Indonesia.
Till now.
Until now.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Let's be optimistic.
Hopefully.
And what about outside? Are you on the board of any international museums? Have you been involved?
At the moment, one of my collection artwork is borrowed by Asia Society Museum, New York, for the show After Darkness. Yeah.
If anyone hasn't seen it and you're in New York, please visit Asia Society. Bun Hui Tan has curated a wonderful exhibition of Southeast contemporary art that's on exhibit now at the Asia Society in New York. Very wonderful exhibition.
Yeah.
Very strong exhibition with a lot of sort of information about the recent history of Southeast Asia. Everyone should see it. It's a great show.
Actually, it's an honor for every collector if a museum would come to us and say, can I borrow your artworks to be shown in the museum? That happens to the director of Liechtenstein National Museum. We met in Singapore, and after speaking about my collection, and then he said, "Oh, Wiyu, can I borrow your collection for a show?" And I said, "You don't need to ask. Just come and pick what you want." It's an honor. Every collector would do it, right?
Yeah. Liu Gang, I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear a little bit about your involvement with museums in Beijing and in China.
Yeah, I am one of the patron group of UCCE. We actually, in that group, we have about 40 collectors. We are not only give the financial support to UCCE, we also regularly have the lunch or dinner together to exchange the view about arts.
And you travel together.
Yeah, we travel together.
The
Yes.
Uhlans Center for Contemporary Art in Beijing had a private contemporary art museum that's done a great job of forming patron committees. Let's say not an Anglo-Saxon model of a board of trustees or a board of directors, but patron groups.
Right. Besides that, I also a member of the board of the Yuan Museum, which is a very small museum, but very special. This museum promotes Chinese abstract arts.
And that's in Beijing also.
In Beijing also.
And that's a private museum also.
Private museum.
Yeah. And when was that museum first opened, the UN Museum?
I think they already have several years. I can't remember exactly when.
And Uhlans is 10 years.
Yeah, 10
so
years.
This idea of patrons supporting the museum and being actively participating in the museum is something I think that's become more mature in Beijing.
Right.
And Douglas, what about Hong Kong?
I sit on the Museum Advisory Committee in Hong Kong, and I think looking at all the friends, it's a great platform because people who sit on the committee, they are usually very, very passionate about different aspects. I mean, in Hong Kong, that committee actually looks after the different major museums in Hong Kong, including history, art, and also science. So you have a very interesting group and very diverse group. At the same time, I see the government actually started to appreciate that in Hong Kong, it's good to have a very diversified portfolio of museums. As you know, Hong Kong, probably unlike many cities in the world, all the major museums are actually government-owned museums. The curators and people working in these museums, they're all government officials, I think, by definition. So I think going forward, I see that there is actually plenty of room for museums, especially private museums, to develop, because I really don't see the government going to establish more museums by themselves. But at the same time, I think certain major exhibitions are more suitable to be shown in public museums. For example, if we're talking about looking at the last few years, if we're talking about some major shows like the Terracotta Warriors from Xi'an, or all the major treasures from the palace museums, or you're talking about recently Monet paintings, Picasso exhibitions 2 years ago. I think probably the government museums would, for security reasons and other reasons, would be best suited to organize this type of huge major exhibitions, and because they also have the space and people to do so. But at the same time, I think on the more specific topics, especially I think just now we talk about photography is one, but if you are overseas, you can see that on very, very small topics, but fun topics. For example, in London, there's Sherlock Holmes Museum. Just now I mentioned the toilet museum. There's transport museums. There are toys museums. So I think on these subjects, actually, I would say that private museums, they do have a role to play. And then especially, if they work with the major collectors in these specific areas, actually, I think private museums can, on a specific subject, be a very influential force, and maybe even on a lot of the shows and also on the transfer of knowledge in those areas, they could do better than government museums.
Can I add one thing? Yeah, they're talking about the museum in Hong Kong. I believe the M+ is very important. In our passion group of UCC, we talk M+ a lot. Yeah, we believe M+ will set up the sample or standard for Asian arts. In Europe, they have TED, Louvre, National Gallery in London. In the US, they have MoMA, Guggenheim. No, the big important museum in Asia. So we hope that M+ will become one of the leading museums in the world to promote the Asian arts.
Well, I hope you're all involved with the M+ Museum. I believe that the more people that are involved, the better. The more collector input, the better for everybody. Why don't we open the floor to questions from the audience? Does anyone have any particular questions they'd like to ask the collectors?
Thanks very much for really fascinating talks, and very kind of you to share your sort of perspectives. I have a comment and a question to Dr. Wiyu. The comment is that actually the archiving and migrating of digital sources is something Tate Conservation of Time-Based Media is very much invested in. So perhaps I can tell you a little bit more about how to tackle these very challenging artworks artists are just constantly making. And we have the sort of perpetual right to migrate source materials into whatever the technology which may come, we don't know yet. And question is, you talked about the context. I think that's really important concept to really talk about, to replace concept. You talked about context. I'm just, as a sort of someone working in a Western institution, very conscious of this challenge or issue or problem of showing works from non-Western or formerly marginalized part of the globe. Do we always have this problem of sort of facing the colonial issues in terms of perspectives and the motivation? And in your view, how this sort of very fundamental issue of showing something which isn't your context or your audiences, your major audiences' context, but how to interpret this very diverse context into your particular specific place and time?
Wow, that's a complicated questions. Yeah. First of all, maybe very basic information is I feel like the issue of identity politics and all the marginalized societies and Western dominance or cultural imperialism is actually so important in understanding contemporary art. But at the same time, the majority of my friends that I have met, they were not aware of it. And then if I still collect this topic, focus, I feel like it's already 50 years. Yeah, in our time, in 21st century, everything changed so fast. Should I still focus on something which was good for 50 years ago? You know what I mean? So I'm very proud to be a cutting edge collector. And then focusing on something 50 years disturbed me so much. Yeah, and that is a struggle inside myself, whether it is still important or not. This is maybe one point. The second point is regarding, because of the budget that I have, I'm not maybe confronted so much compared to you in a museum. So, and I also don't travel so much to see artworks. First of all, I don't enjoy going to art fair except meeting friends, because in the art fair I don't get anything. Never get anything in an art fair except in Rossi and Rossi Gallery in Art Basel, Hong Kong one day. It was an exception. Yeah, but yeah, it was a great artwork. And yeah, and usually I don't get anything. And I'm also aware that every visitors, I get about 100 to 150 visitors a year in my office. And I always tell them that we have to be careful as collectors. If you only focus looking at art which are offered by galleries and by art fairs, then the good artworks maybe are already filtered out, because galleries only displayed what the galleries like. That means the artworks that exist in the world is already picked by the taste of the galleries. If the galleries have a very old taste, then they will serve, maybe old taste artworks. So there are a lot of great artworks, but the artist doesn't have the luck to be represented by great galleries, and they disappear. And this is a very interesting challenge, actually, for collectors who doesn't want to make money. Otherwise, you have to really concentrate on big names, branded. So back to your questions, because I only see a little of it, and there aren't so many choices. You know what I mean? So I was not so confronted to the topic that you speak about. So I just find a very interesting artwork, and then the context suit my collection, and then I will buy. I don't analyze so much, because I think I have learned from a lot of great collectors. I like to read books about great collectors. And then I find out that you have to be focused. Focus in certain whatever, medium or topic or context, and then the collection can be great. If you collect, in German we call it across the field. So you cross the field and buy rice, and then another cross the field and buy vegetable and then fruits, and then it becomes eclectic collection. So, and then I try to focus in special topics, and and I find out there aren't so many choices. So you have to buy what you find and do a lot of research yourself.
I have a question. You said your collection was recently exhibited in Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue is really how is it received by the audience?
Yeah.
Are they looking for something uniquely Indonesian in your collection? I think sometimes there is this, 文化误会. There's a problem of translating from one culture to the other and making the audience sort of appreciate.
Yeah. We don't get feedback. I don't know. Tate doesn't do exhibition for private collection, right? So after the 4-month show, I didn't get any feedback. How the audience find the collection, and whether they see it as an Indonesian collection. I don't see it, but a lot of people come to see my collection and say, "Oh, I can see because you are trained as a mechanical engineer. You're PhD in technique. That's why your collection is." But I don't see it. Actually, I don't feel like it is like a mechanical engineer collection. Sorry. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving your perspectives on where you've come from. You've all got individual stories, and it's quite interesting to know that you've all come from almost an analytical background and ended up in sort of a creative world. I suppose it's a closing question that in 20 years' time, where do you see your collections and how will they change, given that you have spoken about change to date in your various paths? And I'm interested to sort of understand individually where you'll be in 20 years' time with your collections.
Wow. Yeah, I'm very busy asking those questions because there is a theory called the extreme present. Maybe you have heard about it. So that 50% of the world population are born post-89, and they are now 28 years old. They become the decision makers in our society. They become the collectors of our future. And these people witness the very fast changing of technology in our society. And for them, switching from Facebook to Instagram was so easy, and from Instagram to Snapchat and so on. So they follow all the changes. We haven't found any terminology for something new, and it has already become history. This is the situation we are facing. So the present is extreme short. And that brings me to think how my collection will be. So we collect something like bio art. I haven't met anybody who collect bio art. And maybe in 5 years, it's already boring for these post-89 kids. Yeah, that's why I asked my kids, so I have a daughter and son, and I said, you always have to tell me what you like. Yeah, because I told them, because they bring their friends from the school to see my collection. Oh, and they were so happy. Wow, your father is so cool, never see computer, digital artworks before. I said, well, I'm so proud to be a very cutting-edge collector. And one day, if your friends come to see my collection and say, your dad's collection is so old, so boring, I said, I will commit suicide. So that's why your question is a challenge for me to find out what these post-89 kids like. And it is also a challenge for museum because the budget is decreasing every year, and you can't display Damien Hirst anymore for that kids. They will say, what, you still display Damien Hirst from the 90s? Are you crazy? Yeah. So I think that is a challenge. And also for galleries, a gallery nurture a certain artist for 10 years, send him to different countries for exhibitions, and then you get the payback after they are branded. It doesn't work anymore because they see it 10 years ago in your gallery, and then if you still have an exhibition, or I saw it 10 years ago, are you crazy? You want to sell it still? Because these kids, if they talk about the future, in their mind is 2 years. I think if I talk about the future in my subconsciousness, is 20 years to 30 years, right? If you talk, in my age, if I say about future, it's 10 years, 20 years, but they talk about future is 2 years. So there is a big difference if you after 10 years still have the same gallery in your, the same artist in your gallery, it's old stuff for them. I keep on thinking about this topic. I mean, I'm very lucky that you asked the question. So it's very challenging. Until today, I don't know how it would be. I cannot hang my bio art in my office anymore because they find it so boring.
Liu Gang and Douglas, where are your collections going to be in 20 years?
After more than 20 years, actually expand the scope, my collection. I actually start collect the performing arts.
Performance art.
Yes, the digital arts, installation, video. But the main thing still focused on painting. But I like to try the new things. Talk about the next generation. In my view, the opinion will change when they grow up. So I always persuade my son and daughter to see art fair, go to the gallery, and most importantly to read books. So to let them to have their own knowledge, to have the good foundation for their future.
Douglas, photography conservation is also a serious problem 20 years from now.
I think before we talk about, whether, or what to do with the collection in 20 years, I think we first of all, we need to be able to tell people or for our loved ones in the family or otherwise to know what you have. I think that is a major problem with a lot of collectors. Most of the knowledge is here, okay? And that's why just now I think we all share the importance of, I think, really documenting, what you have, your collection, and the significance, of that collection and the specific pieces. And that's why I actually see myself maybe going forward in terms of adding to my collection. Probably I will spend less time buying, or I will buy much more selectively. But at the same time, I want to devote more of my time actually documenting what's in the collection, so that at a certain stage when I want to pass on the collection, I'll be able to let people know what's there and why are these pieces special and why it's worth spending time appreciating them. So I think it's again it's more a matter of really putting together the information in a form that you'll be able to share with others. In that way, then people will be able to appreciate your collection more, and then people want it. And I think in my case, I've already started to put the collection into the museum, and hopefully in future, when these collections are available, maybe on certain subjects, they may even tour. If they're good enough, then I would assume that perhaps we are not looking at just Hong Kong. Maybe the collections would be able to go to other places and even to other museums and institutions, where they can be displayed, shared, and also research on.
Thank you. More questions?
Hi, thank you for sharing your knowledge of art and culture. I have a question on VR, virtual reality. What are your insights on sharing your collections within a virtual environment? Because in our modern age, we went from industrialization all the way to the internet, and especially looking at China, using WeChat, you're sharing information to such a mass amount of people in a very short amount of time. So where do you think art will go on when you're transferring physical artworks, let's say oil paintings or even printed photography, but in a virtual environment? Would that take away from the experience, or do you think sharing this would actually expand the knowledge to our world in this current stage?
I have to make a quick plug, because tomorrow during the symposium, we have someone from HTC doing a VR demonstration and talking about VR. So these guys can talk about it also, but please come back tomorrow because there'll be a much more detailed discussion on VR tomorrow.
I think tomorrow will be about VR art, right? Right? More, but she's asking about building a collection in VR.
The lady, and the lady who's speaking is actually building a VR department within the company. Okay. So it's how to use the VR in all aspects, making art, collecting art, how to use it. Fine. But have you used VR in your collection?
No, but I'm very sure it will be the future. Yeah, I'm thinking seriously to share the collection in VR for for the wider public, so accessible through internet and stuff. And I also want to buy the VR art. I was in Basel this year and saw the opening of the House of Electronic Kunst, also House of Electronic Art. It's a museum dedicated for electronic art. And they have an exhibition of VR art, about 30 pieces, mind-blowing. Yeah, so you really see, you are put into a new world. And what interesting was actually I saw a guy walking very slow. And then I thought like, hey, you have to find him. You run very fast. And then I came very close to him, this guy, really shoulder to shoulder. And my mind always remind me, he is not real, he is fake, he's fake. Yeah? But your feeling doesn't follow you. That was so fascinating because you feel like you are standing beside a human being. Yeah, and in that moment, I was thinking like, wow, this is so good also to share collections. Yeah, and you know, VR art, a lot of people not even have seen VR art, and the price is already $300,000 US by Christian Lammerts and Paul McCarthy. And Christian Lammerts, the crucified golden Jesus with the blood dropping in gold color, it's $100,000 US. So I have to buy very soon, otherwise I cannot afford to buy anymore because VR is fascinating. Yeah.
I forgot to mention that we also have a VR demonstration here.
Tomorrow.
So it's available today and tomorrow. So if anyone wants to try the VR equipment, it's here. We have it for everybody. Yeah, sure.
I just want to share what I've seen at Foto London last year. First time for me that I actually had a tour of a VR museum. It's a new technology, probably not already new because that was 1 year ago. That I was given a tour, basically, wearing all the I don't know what you call that device, but the VR thing. And basically, it's a new technology that they're available to artists now. That would enable artists to, through sending the files to a particular company, that company would be able to help you curate and actually set up your own museum by VR. Meaning that you don't really need a physical space to share your artwork. And you can share as many pieces of art, your creation, as possible. You can work with that company to really create a tour so that people from different parts of the world would be able to see your work just like they were in a museum. And you could even adjust the lighting and everything so that every piece is presented differently to an audience. And after looking at it, I thought, wow. It's really impressive, and I think that was just the start of that particular technology. So in a few years' time, God knows where we will be in terms of the VR technology. But I can surely see that in terms of presenting or sharing one's works, in terms of I think sharing of information, all of that across the globe, that would be fantastic. But I don't think that could be a replacement of really physically appreciating an artwork in front of you. I mean, even though, for example, my area about photography, and a lot of people tell me that, oh, okay, I've seen that photo. There's plenty of such images, on the computer. I can only tell you that it's not the same. If you look at a well-made print and a well-curated exhibition of photography, the experience is entirely different. Just to share, because the catalog happened to be with me. Some of you may have seen this photo, a Man Ray photo, which was auctioned at the Christie's Paris last week. I happened to be there, physically looking at that photo, and it was just absolutely incredible to look at a piece which I had seen hundreds of times. Some of you may have seen on a computer. And of course, I've also seen a modern print of it. But this is a vintage print which was sold in Paris last week. And does anyone know how much the photograph went for? Just for information, it was sold for 2.6 million euros at a Paris auction last week. And why would people pay $2.6 million for a photograph? Well, you have to see the photograph to understand why.
Another question?
Yeah, thank you for such a wonderful talk. And on the sideline, thank you, Mr. So, for giving a very impromptu talks tour when on the Henri Jacques Latique's exhibition when the museum was closed earlier this year. But as a novice, may I ask you experts a very simple question? How would you value a piece of artwork unbranded without auction record that would give justice to the artist, to the art dealer, without overpaying the stuff? Thank you.
Who wants to?
I don't think so much about it, actually. If I find an artwork not branded at all, and the artwork match to the collection, I mean, still focus in as part of my collection, and I have the money, coincidentally, on that day to buy, and then I will spend. Yeah. I never think like, it is too expensive, or maybe later on I cannot sell, or I don't make profit. That is far away from my activity as a collector. Yeah.
Liu Gang?
Yeah, for me, I have the two reference. One is about history, the Chinese history. The second is the art history. If the painting or artwork represent the event, major event in history, I believe that piece will live long, because the people know that event. They can learn from the art piece what kind of feeling the people, that artist. And also, secondly, I also consider whether this piece is have the position in art history. If not, so it's not very important. But if could be a chance to keep in art history, I will definitely buy.
I think prices, it's always just one of the reference. In the end, again, you need to have the knowledge to be able to differentiate. And also, we always say that whether a collector has a good eye, because a lot of times people can go to ArtNet and all the other right now reference websites or other reference books, to give you information on recent transactions on a particular art piece or on a particular artist. But I would say that all that is only for reference. I mean, you always have very, very extreme talk about prices like the one that I've shown just now, Man Ray, or on photography of Cindy Sherman, Guernsey, and Sanders, going for the 7-digit price range. But for me, last week when I was in Paris, the piece that gave me the greatest joy was an accidental find of an anonymous photographer's work, which I thought the print was absolutely beautiful from the 30s, very small one, and then aesthetically and otherwise is just a first-class photographer. I don't even know who the photographer was taking this photo. But in the end, the shop owner asked for 200 euros. I would have paid 10 times, for that photo. So I mean, for that's good enough. Is there a particular price guide for that particular photo? No, but does it really matter? For me at that moment, no.
Maybe one last question.
Hi. Well, there's a lady in front of me, so I don't mind exchanging. Well, if you can do 2 questions, I'm here. Thank you. So I'm European. I'm very interested in, I have partly a family collection, a small collection that I'm trying to diversify into Asian art and looking into it. But I'm very interested in how you are thinking about the collection beyond a generation. So with your children, or I don't know, at the museum, because it's a very personal kind of situation around the collector and the geography and the moment in history. If one has to kind of manage something that has been collected by somebody else and at the same time put a personal imprint of one's own liking, how would you think about it yourselves and what would you suggest? Thanks.
Is your question related to how your children are going to handle your collection, or?
In general, not necessarily my children, or but in general, how do you transcend the collection to somebody that comes after that, whether it's a museum that you donated to, or your children, or a friend, or whatever it is that also across different cultures and historical moments. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I was invited to speak in Jakarta about the nightmare of a collector. That's topic. And I said I spend most of my income for artworks. I don't have saving in real. And I spend everything I have for buying artworks. And I'm crook. And then I said, one day, if I die, and let's say my kids, they don't like my collection, I think they will not like, because they will like maybe something virtual reality or whatever. And then I said, maybe they will change it. They want to sell my collection and then buy the one they like. And then they go to auctions, Sotheby's and Christie's, and nobody want. That is, for me, a nightmare. Yeah. And then as a Chinese, you may not burn it, right? It's against our culture, yeah? It's disrespect, even if the father died. And I said, you cannot burn, and then you cannot sell, yeah? And then, and you're hoping that you will put it in the warehouse and the termite will eat it out. And yeah, and then I said, so that's why we have to be very focused in buying something sustainable that will be seen as a zeitgeist. Later on in 50 years, maybe my collection will worth a lot, that they will be happy and say, oh yeah, I don't like it, I will sell and buy what I like. This is only my target. Yeah, I don't think like I can teach them to appreciate my collection. Yeah, I teach them to appreciate art in general. Never force them to like my collection.
You're happy for your collection to be worth 0 in 20 years' time.
Sorry?
You're happy for your collection to be worth nothing at some point for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware because
or even cost money to your children to maintain.
With my understanding about the zeitgeist, I don't have, or no one of us can say that my collection is good, because we have to wait 50 years or 100 years from now, and then people will look back and say, in 2017, the zeitgeist was, and my collection has to conform with that zeitgeist, and then that is a good collection. And I imagine like in 1860s, 1870s, the collectors that collected Impressionism, Monet, Manet, Edgar Degas, Renoir, and Pissarro, and so on. He is the collector. And there are 1,000 or 100,000 other collectors and artists who didn't paint, who didn't collect Impressionists. What happens with them? Crabs. Yeah, just like my collection maybe. We have to wait in 50 years whether they will talk about digitalization and globalization. Then, yeah, my grandsons and daughters will be so happy.
Oh, one final question you had here in the front? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Douglas. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Can I just say something about that? I think, for me, I think what's more important for me, like, in 20, 30 years or when I'm no longer around in relation to the possession, I don't think I'm particularly fussed about, keeping the collection in the family forever. I always thought that, if someone's not selling the collection, I would not be buying them today. So someone must be selling so that, that collection can continue, to pass on, albeit to different people over time. But I think what would I find really pleasing is the fact that in 20, 30 years' time, I've done, maybe not entirely by myself, but, through working with different people, scholars and things, be able to publish a series of books, on my collection and, what I've collected or, on certain subjects that in the end, I think that is more important than actually keeping the physical object. I think you will be remembered as a collector for what you have contributed, to a particular collection in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the research, and in terms of what you have contributed and help people understand the subject more over time. And then I think the books now, especially with the internet age, books are the things, and the knowledge that you put together is the things that would really be perpetual, if I may say, rather than the objects itself, which, as we know, cameras, in my area, cameras, photographs, books and things. Like Doctor just said, if you just happen to have termites, visiting you, your house, whatever, they'll be gone. They'll be gone. But the knowledge and the books and the publications you put together, they will live on.
Yeah, I have a different view. I think for me, I will try very hard to keep the collection together as longer as possible, even after life. That's why I educate my children, let them to understand what is the importance of the arts. And also, I talk with several key museums, try to persuade to loan some masterpiece to the museum. And thirdly, write a book, which I already did.
So the last question here. And then you can always ask questions privately afterwards.
Hello. I guess my question relates more to the present time and its development since you first started collecting your items. How, I guess, your approach to collecting has matured over this time, be it influences from people or events or just personal experiences. How did it get to this point now?
So every collector makes the same experience, actually, because if you stand in front of an artwork and you make a judgment, I like it or I don't like it, or you say it's good or it's not good, this judgment comes from your personal taste. And the taste is strongly influenced from your knowledge. And knowledge can be learned, that means taste can be learned. So by reading a lot of books or getting knowledgeable friends and experience, you refine your taste. The artworks that you like a long time ago, except your painting that you bought because of this emotional touch, you don't like it anymore. Yeah. So every collector makes always the same experience. Yeah. And you have to let go, because that's why you always display the last pieces that you buy in the office, because the other one you will think like it's not vibrant anymore. It's not touching. I mean, yeah, you're not proud of it anymore. So luckily we refine our taste over the years, and then and we will buy always a better one.
I think we have to stop here because we've got our 5 o'clock keynote speaker. If anyone has any more questions for the speakers, just feel free to come up and ask. And we have a little break, a little coffee and tea.